Okay, you guys, this is something that was sort of suggested to me. Well, wasn't really suggested. It was asked. And so then I decided it was something I might want to do. So, Storm Shadow asked if I was going to make a list of my favorite films of the decade, and that was really intriguing and challenging because there have been a lot of movies I've liked, and so I had to go through year by year and refresh my memory as to the movies that had come out. There were a lot that I had forgotten about, and so I picked several for each year, and the one that made the top spot for me was the one that just invoked the most positive or enjoyable feelings about it, something that I wouldn't mind watching again and again. There are honorable mentions for the ones that didn't make it into the top spot. Some of them, it was really close between, like number one and the next honorable mention. And I think there's one year where I have two of them tied as my favorite. So it's my list. I can construct it how I want to. So that's what I did. So we're going to start with the year 2010, and I'm going to try to move as quickly as I can because I have a lot of different movies that I just wanted to touch on. Always, right? Anyway, I was saying I have a lot of different movies I want to touch on, so I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. But if I feel like it's going long, and also if my computer starts to overheat, I may have to do this in batches. And if it goes a certain amount of time, I will probably cut it into parts because I tend to ramble, even though I don't mean to, but my mind goes in all these different directions of things that I think about that I want to say. Anyway, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into this. So for 2010, there are only about 3 movies on this list, and I'm going to start with honorable mentions and move my way down to number 1. So the first honorable mention is Daybreakers. It's been a while since I've seen some of these movies, you guys, and I haven't gone to relook up, the synopsis for all of them, so I'll just try to very briefly explain what it's about. This is a vampire movie, and it's about they're like somebody's trying to find a cure or something like that, and this is really vague, but basically vampire. I like vampire stuff, and this one was done pretty well because in this one the vampires they're not animalistic for the most part. They live these normal white collar type lives, go home and they have their bottle of, instead of a glass of wine, it's like a glass of blood or whatever. So it was kind of interesting. Pretty, bloody, gory in parts, obviously, but I personally really liked this. Ethan Hawke is the main actor. Willem Dafoe is in it, and Sam Neill. And that's that. When I looked back through the list, that one was one of the first ones that caught my eye, and it didn't make number 1. I don't know exactly why. I think it's just because the one that I picked for number 1, I have watched many more times, and I really, really like this movie. So the next honorable mention, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. They took Deathly Hallows and they split it up into 2 parts. I felt like they didn't really need to do that, but just because I really enjoyed the Harry Potter movies so much, I had to include this on the list. So those are just the only 2 honorable mentions, and so the number 1 for 2010 for me is this one, The Next 3 Days. I really like this movie. It's well acted, it's well directed, it's well written. It stars Russell Crowe, obviously, as you can tell, and his wife is played by Elizabeth Banks, and she gets accused of murder, and she goes to jail, and he does not believe that she's done it. So, they've exhausted all their appeals processes, and he decides finally he's going to break her out of jail. And that's what this movie is about. I'm not going to get into any real spoilers about these movies in case anyone hasn't seen them. I mean, it's been out for almost 10 years, so. But anyway, just in case. So that's my top 3 for 2010. That's my top 1. I'm going to move on to 2011. Okay, so for 2011, it would not be complete without including the conclusion to the Harry Potter saga, The Deathly Hallows Part 2. I thought it was done pretty well. It had been a while since I'd listened to the last book before I watched this, so obviously I forgot little details, but I really liked the film adaptation of these books, and I especially liked the last movie. You know, the last 2 movies combined to me are kind of like one movie, but I really feel like it brought this whole world to life, and it just, the seriousness of everything, it got darker and darker until the end. It was just like pretty dark, you know, for a YA story. And I like the film adaptation, and so I have to put it on the list for 2011. So the next movie, the next honorable mention is The Lincoln Lawyer. Now this was a book that I had listened to years ago. I remember I was driving to the airport one day. I've told this story before, not on here, but to different people. I was driving to the airport to pick up my brother. He was coming into town for a surprise visit, and I was listening to this. And I got to this very like climactic moment, and I was so into this book, I just went right past the exit. So I had to do a U-turn and come back around. It's not good to be listening to audiobooks while you're driving, I think, sometimes. So when I found out it was going to be made into a movie, I was really excited. My husband and I went to go see this movie while the kids and their cousin went to go see Rango, that animated movie with Johnny Depp. He's a lizard or something. Anyway, I digress. I feel like this was a super good adaptation of the book. It really hit all of the important parts, followed the storyline pretty well. That climactic scene was in the movie. And so, yeah, super good. I really have no complaints about this film adaptation or this movie at all, really. So it made my honorable mention. Next movie. Thor. Thor is not really the most appreciated of the MCU movies. I mean, it is above Captain Marvel, but everything else is above Captain Marvel as far as audience scores go, and with good reason. Captain Marvel did not make any of my lists. So Thor, I thought, was really good. Chris Hemsworth comes in, and he's kind of a sort of an unknown. I mean, I had only seen him in Star Trek. He played Captain Kirk's father in the very beginning, and I did see him in A Perfect Getaway, the one with Mila Jovovich and Timothy Olyphant, and he was in there. But Thor, of course, is the movie that I started to notice him more as an actor, and I feel like this movie was pretty well done. If I remember correctly, Thor was the first MCU movie to introduce supernatural-ish mythology sort of stuff. Before that, it was Iron Man and Incredible Hulk. You could say Incredible Hulk is supernatural-ish, but it was, to me, it's more like science-based type thing, even though, yes, okay, it's stretching it, maybe sci-fi, whatever. Anyway, so Thor comes out, and I liked it. It was lighthearted when it needed to be, serious when it needed to be, but not overly heavy-handed with seriousness and doom and gloom and stuff like that. I feel like the actors did a pretty good job. I was not happy with Natalie Portman being in there just because I don't care for her for various reasons. She's just not my favorite at all. So I could do without her being in there. But overall, it was a fun movie, and I feel like the acting choices, except for her, were pretty spot on. I liked everybody's performances. And so that's why it makes my honorable mention for 2011. Moving on. Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I did not watch this the year it came out. In fact, a lot of these movies I didn't watch the year they came out, but I put them in that respective year because that's when they came out, even though I didn't happen to see it then. So technically, maybe it's not really, you know, my favorite of 2011 because I didn't watch it in 2011. But I digress. That's technical stuff. Doesn't matter. This movie is hilarious. It's a dark comedy. It's about these two hillbilly, rednecky guys that come into contact with these college students, and there's all this misunderstanding that happens, and the college students think these two guys are killers, you know, because they kind of look at it first, you know, you wonder. But it does turn out that there is a real killer running around But this is hilarious because of all the misunderstandings that happen, and it's just so it's slapsticky. It's very bloody slapsticky comedy. That's about the best way I can think to describe it. You guys should watch it. Okay, next one. X-Men First Class. So I really like this film. I know it plays with the timeline in a way that's not really quite accurate, especially like when the next one came out, but it was fun. I liked seeing the younger cast for the different characters, and I felt like it flowed really well, and it was quite enjoyable. And I'm going to move on quickly to the next one. Okay, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. So, Mission Impossible, I can't remember when Mission Impossible 3 came out. Anyway, whatever. So the first Mission Impossible, when I saw it, it was okay, but I wasn't super impressed with it. And then the second movie came out, and it was so bad, you guys. It was so bad. I was like, oh my gosh, it's just getting worse and worse. Then the third movie came out. I can't remember what the third movie was called. This is the fourth one. But the third movie came out before 2010. Anyway, when the third movie came out, it was such an improvement. I was so impressed with it. And then the movies just got better and better. I mean, they didn't really degrade in quality. The action was great. The writing was pretty good. So then I went and I revisited the first one a year or plus ago. And upon the second rewatching, I appreciate it much more now. I feel like it was pretty solid. I really had such a bad experience with the second one that I do not want to watch it again. So I don't really even count that one. But because this one came out in 2011, this is on my list of honorable mentions. So let's move on to the next. I believe the next one actually might be my number one. I think so. Here we go. Yes. A number one for 2011. I did not see this until about 2012, but Warrior with Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton. It's a drama. It's a character drama, but it involves a lot of sort of action in the sense that these guys are like MMA, UFC type fighters. I don't know the difference. I use those terms interchangeably. If I'm wrong, sorry. Anyway, I had heard it was good, and then my brother told me about how he had seen it and it was really good. So when he was in town for my grandfather's funeral, we ended up watching it at that time. So I kind of have sad memories associated with it, but the movie's really, really good. These two brothers are estranged. Alcoholism had torn their family apart, and they come back into contact with each other. And it ends up that they both join this MMA tournament, and at the end, they meet together in the final match. So with all the tensions going on, it just adds such an extra layer of heavy, intense drama. And Nick Nolte plays their alcoholic father. His performance in this movie was excellent, you guys. He was nominated for an Oscar. He did not win. I feel like he should have. It was so good. This movie will lift you up, and yet at the same time just crush your heart with just so sad in some places. And because you can sort of identify with what these people are going through, and probably, you know, other people more so than maybe me, because I didn't have the type of home life that these characters did. But I can understand, you know, the feelings that they must be going through, and this you know, heartache and everything of them being split apart, and you know, the ramifications of that through their lives. And anyway, so it's a super good movie. I recommend it to everyone. This movie, I do believe, is probably in my top 10, one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time, I believe. But I need to go reanalyze that list. Anyway, okay, moving on to 2012.